The old villa on the hill has cast a haunting shadow over the small town of Midvale for over 2 decades. With its rotting facade and overgrown vines, it stood abandoned, a relic of times long gone. The townspeople spoke in hushed whispers about its dark past, recounting tales of tragedy and despair. Yet the most chilling tales revolved around the peculiar sight of a mosquito net swaying in the bedroom window every night. My curiosity led me to investigate the phenomenon, embarking on an unsettling journey that would awaken more than just memories. Secrets long buried would resurface, entangling me in a sinister web. Alone, yet unable to resist, I approached the old villa. What I discovered within its crumbling walls would change my perception of reality forever. It all began when I returned to Midvale after years of living in the city. My visits to the old town had always been nostalgic, but now, as I stood before the gate of the infamous villa, an inexplicable pull urged me closer. "You can't be serious," my friend Lisa exclaimed, shaking her head. "That place is dead. They've said it's haunted." I laughed it off, a mixture of bravery and foolishness guiding my steps. The villa towered over us, its windows dark and foreboding. "You've heard the stories, yes? Some say a woman died inside," Lisa continued, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Do you think it's true?" "Just stories, Lisa." "We were kids then. What could possibly happen?" I replied dismissively. But as the night fell, an unsettling sensation filled the air. That evening, it began. The faint swaying of a mosquito net was barely noticeable from below. But it was there. I could feel my heart racing. Even the silence of the night seemed to pulse around me, thickening the atmosphere with dread. As the days passed, the sight became a routine. Each night, objects shifted slightly, shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and I could hear whispers carried by the wind, eerily like a lullaby. "You shouldn't let it get to you," Lisa advised during a phone call one night. "You know your mind plays tricks when you're stressed." I nodded in agreement, still unable to shake off the feeling that something was very wrong. One evening, driven by a mix of terror and intrigue, I fetched a flashlight and approached the villa. As I crossed the threshold, an icy gust sent shivers down my spine. Inside, the air felt suffocatingly stale, laden with the scent of decay. The wooden floors creaked underfoot, each sound amplified through the emptiness. Instinctively, I moved towards the bedroom where the net swayed. As I entered, my heartbeat echoed in the silence. "Is anyone here?" I whispered, half expecting a reply. My voice faded into the daunting stillness. Suddenly, I noticed it, the mosquito net gently swaying as if invisible fingers caressed it. I stepped closer, the beam from my flashlight illuminating only darkness. "What are you?" I whispered, half terrified, half curious. A chill swept through the room, and I felt a presence looming over me. Before I could react, a soft voice, barely audible, broke the air. "Go away, please." My heart raced. Panicking, I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering uncontrollably. Frantically, I turned to leave, but the door creaked shut behind me. "No, no, please," I cried, pounding on the door with desperation. The whispers grew louder, swirling in a cacophony of lament and sorrow. In that moment, a realization dawned upon me. The villa was a vessel of grief, housing an unending sorrow that yearned to be released. I had awakened something that had remained dormant for years, and it would not let me go without a price. Days turned into weeks. I was haunted by my encounter in the villa. Each night, visions plagued my dreams. Flashes of the woman who had once lived there, her face twisted in anguish. I could hear her sobs, feel her despair wrapping around me like a shroud. Lisa noticed my change. "You really need to let this go," she pleaded, worried. "You can't dwell in the past." "I saw something," I insisted during one of our conversations. "I need to know who she was, why she suffered." However, every question drove me deeper into a labyrinth of dread. So, armed with determination and a newfound purpose, I returned to the town library. I sifted through old newspapers and dusty records, uncovering the tragic fate of the villa's last inhabitant, Margaret Holloway, who had perished during a storm that ravaged Midvale, alone and forgotten. "She never wanted to be alone," I muttered to myself, piecing together a grim tale of loss, betrayal, and heartbreak. What if she still lingers, longing for connection? I shared my findings with Lisa, whose expression shifted from disbelief to terror. "You're playing with forces you don't understand," she exclaimed. "It's dangerous." Yet, deeper down, I felt connected. A bond formed by suffering across decades. Haunted, yet driven, I decided to return to the villa, this time with a purpose. "I must help you, Margaret," I whispered, standing in the bedroom once more. "You deserve peace." As I spoke her name aloud, the room shifted. The weight of her sorrow hung heavy like fog, yet I persevered. "Let me hear you," I implored. "Tell me your story." In response, the net swayed violently, wrapping around me like a veil. Ghostly figures began to emerge, wailing as they surrounded me, a chorus of the sorrow-filled souls trapped within the villa. I was engulfed in visions of heartbreak, betrayal unfurling before my eyes. With each memory that played out, I felt Margaret's pain flooding through me. Shadows of lost companionship and desperate cries merged into one haunting melody. "You don't have to be alone anymore," I shouted. "Release your burdens." As the last wail echoed through the depths, a peaceful silence descended. The figures disbanded, and before my eyes the mosquito net stilled. The oppressive atmosphere lightened, clarity enveloping me. Margaret's spirit finally found the solace she sought, her sorrow subsiding like a gentle tide. I emerged from the villa, the night no longer cloaked in dread but bathed in tranquility. The wind caressed my face, and I felt a warmth in my heart where darkness had once prevailed. I knew Midvale would remember the villa's haunting, but I carried the truth of its story, one of love lost and pain endured. As I walked away, the old structure sat behind me, transformed. No longer merely an abandoned relic, it had borne witness to the passage of sorrow and, through me, had found release. The mosquito net would sway no more in an empty bedroom. Instead, it would rest peacefully, like the spirit that had long sought liberation. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked when I met her later, concern etched on her face. I nodded, a faint smile lighting my features. I think she's finally at peace. Little did I know, the echoes of that night would remain with me, a reminder of how intertwined our stories can be, even with those who dwell in shadows. It was supposed to be a peaceful escape from the relentless chaos of city life. My friends and I rented an antique villa deep in the countryside, filled with rustic charm and vintage allure. The first 2 days were filled with laughter and exploration, surrounded by rolling hills and the serenity of nature. However, on the 3rd day, an uninvited guest introduced an unsettling twist to our tranquil retreat. Strange occurrences began to unfold, a creeping feeling of being watched, whispering voices at night, and the inexplicable discovery of an old trunk hidden in the attic. Tension mounted as our camaraderie turned to mistrust, and each of us began to harbor our own suspicions. The antique villa, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a house of horrors. We were compelled to confront not only the supernatural forces at play, but also the darkness within ourselves as we fought to survive until dawn. The villa stood isolated among towering trees that whispered ancient tales when the wind gusted through their branches. When my friends, Clara, Tom, and Jake arrived, we were greeted by the villa's creaking allure. "This place looks like it's straight out of a ghost story," Clara laughed, her voice echoing in the vast entry hall. "I love it. Let's explore," Tom chimed in, his eyes gleaming with adventure. The interior boasted age-old furniture and ornate ceilings peppered with dust motes dancing in the sunlight. We set our things down and spent our first day lounging on the patio, sipping on wine and soaking up the idyllic landscape. By nightfall, we gathered around an old fireplace to share ghost stories, erasing any thoughts of fear with laughter. "Honestly, what's the worst that could happen? We're just in an old house for a few days," Jake joked, tossing another log onto the fire. Little did we know, the villa held secrets buried beneath its charming facade. I couldn't shake off an odd sensation, as if someone was watching us, but I brushed it aside, attributing it to the ambiance of the old house. The second day unfolded smoothly. We explored the nearby town and returned with stories and memories to share. The night, however, brought an unexpected chill. I woke to hushed whispers, low and indistinguishable. "Did you hear that?" I called out, shaking Clara awake, the shadows flickering ominously. "It's probably just the wind," she murmured, her eyes still heavy with sleep. "Yeah, or the walls talking," Tom quipped, dismissing the moment with a yawn. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. On the third day, we decided to delve deeper into the villa, exploring the dusty rooms we had yet to see. The attic beckoned, cloaked in mystery and cobwebs. "We have to check it out," Jake insisted, leading the way up the creaky staircase. The attic smelled of mildew and secrets. Tucked in a corner, we stumbled upon an ornate trunk bound in tarnished metal. "Look at this," Clara exclaimed, brushing off the thick layer of dust. "What do you think is inside?" Tom asked, intrigued. With a shared excitement, we fumbled to unfasten the locks. Inside, we found an array of vintage clothing, faded photographs, and a chilling journal. The pages revealed the life of a woman named Evelyn, who had once lived in the villa. As I read her words, a sense of foreboding washed over me. She wrote of betrayal, jealousy, and despair, things that culminated in a tragic end. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted. "Do you feel that?" I uttered, my breath visible in the air. The whispers from the previous night returned, louder and more insistent, encircling us. "Let's get out of here," Clara urged, her voice tight with fear. Jake hesitated. "But we haven't even looked through everything yet." As we debated, the trunk slammed shut on its own, sending a shudder through us. Panic erupted, and we fled the attic, the whispers echoing in our ears, as if they had followed us down the stairs. The rest of the day took a dark turn. Each one of us felt the weight of the villa's history bearing down on us. It was as if Evelyn was no longer just a name. She had become an entity, watching us, perhaps seeking revenge for our trespass into her past. As night cloaked the villa, we huddled in the living room, the shadows seeming to grow darker with each flicker of the flame. "We should leave," I asserted, my earlier rationality replaced by an instinctual urge to escape. "I want to know more about Evelyn," Jake insisted, but his resolve was fading as he glanced nervously at the windows, which rattled against the mounting wind. Clara, her voice barely above a whisper, suggested, "What if she's trying to communicate with us?" The thought sent shivers down my spine, but it also ignited a sense of curiosity and dread within me. That night, Clara and I woke to the sound of someone sobbing softly. Our hearts raced as we exchanged a terrified glance before awakening the boys. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's just the wind," Jake began, but his confidence waned as the weeping sounded again, resonating from the hallway. Tom grabbed a flashlight. "Let's check it out," he said, though his tone was laced with uncertainty. We crept toward the voice, the air thick with tension. As we turned the corner, the light caught a figure standing at the end of the hall. A woman dressed in a flowing, tattered gown with hollow eyes peered at us, her expression an unsettling mix of sorrow and rage. "Who are you?" Clara managed to stutter, her voice trembling. The specter simply pointed toward the attic, and the whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony that filled our minds. "Leave! Leave!" they screamed in unison, anger laced through each syllable. In a panic, we darted back to the living room, clamoring to gather our things. "What the hell was that?" Tom shouted. "I think we disturbed something we shouldn't have," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We need to call for help." But our phones had no signal, ensnared by the villa's eerie hold. We were trapped, physically and mentally, our fear escalating with every passing moment. With the shadowy figure lurking just beyond our sight, our resolve to leave only intensified. "We'll take the car and drive out of here," Jake suggested. "It doesn't matter if we don't have everything packed." As we made our way to the door, the wind howled, and the temperature sank dramatically, causing the room to feel suffocating. Just as we reached for the handle, the front door slammed shut with a resounding thud. Panic rose like bile in my throat. "We're not going to survive this night," Clara cried, tears streaming down her face. But in that moment, the whispers transformed into a chorus of pleading, a desperate cry from Evelyn. "Help me," she implored, immersed in both sorrow and fury. As dawn broke the following day, the world outside seemed unrecognizable, bathed in an unnatural light that felt both repelling and inviting. It was a temporary reprieve from our terror, but the unsettled feeling lingered. "Let's try to escape through the back," I suggested, my heart pounding. We raced through the shadowy halls, the whispers now morphing into anguished shrieks that echoed our own fears. Without plan or purpose, we barreled down the stairs, spilling into the garden, gasping for breath. In a moment of resounding silence, we paused to catch our breath. But the peace was short-lived. Our hearts sank when we glanced back at the villa. The windows appeared to swirl, as if the entity within regarded us with longing and ire. "We can't go back," Tom asserted, resolute. And so, we fled down the winding dirt road, leaving the villa and Evelyn's haunting past behind. Even today, the memory of that antique villa lingers. The moments of shared laughter twisted into nightmares that refuse to let me go. I often find myself pondering this question. Had Evelyn ever truly been a guest at the villa? Or had we merely become unwitting players in her eternal tragedy? The terror of that haunting experience forever etched in my mind serves as a reminder. The past has a way of reaching out to those who dare to disturb its slumber. During a recent visit to an abandoned villa, I stumbled upon an ancient guest book that had not been updated since 1998. The last entry was chilling. Don't want to know what happened. Intrigued, yet apprehensive, I felt compelled to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of the derelict mansion. As I delved deeper into the villa's past, encountering mysterious shadows and eerie sounds, I began to realize that the story behind the last page was not merely a caution, it was a warning. The deeper I dug, the more I understood that some truths were meant to remain buried. It was a warm summer day in the summer of 2022 when my friends Sarah, Jake, and I decided to explore an abandoned villa rumored to be haunted. The villa, once a lavish home, now stood forgotten on the outskirts of town, overtaken by wild vines and creeping shadows. Its ominous presence piqued my curiosity, and as we entered, a shiver ran down my spine, an instinctive foreboding that something sinister lay within. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Sarah whispered, her voice laced with unease. "Come on, Miss Scaredy Cat, it's just an old house," Jake replied, pretending to be brave. As we moved inside, dust motes danced in the sunlight that filtered through cracked windows. The air was thick with neglect, and a heavy silence enclosed us. I spotted a large, ornate guest book resting atop a dusty table in the corner. Curious, I approached it, brushing away the grime. "We should check it out," I suggested, flipping to the last few pages. The entries were sparse, but the last one struck me immediately. "Don't want to know what happened." The ominous words sent a chill down my spine. "Guys, look at this," I called, unable to conceal my excitement mixed with dread. "What does it say?" Sarah leaned closer. "It ends with this cryptic warning. It hasn't been signed." I trailed off, feeling the air grow colder. "Let's find out what happened," Jake urged, his eyes glimmering with excitement. As we delved deeper into the villa, an unsettling silence enveloped us. Each creak of the floorboards echoed through the halls, as if the house protested our intrusion. Climbing the staircase, the wallpaper peeled away, revealing grotesque imprints beneath. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, but each time I turned, nothing was there. "Did you see that?" I said, halting abruptly. "See what?" Sarah asked, scanning our surroundings nervously. "I thought I saw a figure in the hallway," I responded, my heart racing. "It's just the shadows playing tricks on you," Jake laughed, though I detected a hint of nervousness in his voice as well. Suddenly, the air changed. A palpable weight settled around us, the kind that whispered of unfulfilled tragedies. We discovered a hidden room in a back corner, its door slightly ajar. The accumulated dust on the doorknob hinted that it had not been opened in years. "Should we?" I murmured, but deep down I knew we would. The room was filled with forgotten relics, old toys, family photos, and a single dusty mirror. The reflection was warped, and an unnatural darkness seemed to flow from it. As I stepped forward, I felt an icy hand grasp my shoulder. I spun around to find Jake and Sarah staring at something behind me, their faces pale. "What is it?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "We saw a woman in the mirror. She looked like she was crying," Sarah gasped. "Just an illusion. It's probably just the lighting," Jake reassured, though his voice trembled. But the overwhelming sensation of despair penetrated our minds, pulling us closer to the truth we desired to uncover. Determined to unveil the secrets behind the entries in the guest book, we explored further. Each step dragged us deeper into an abyss of dread. We stumbled upon faded newspaper clips about a family that had lived in the villa, mysteriously vanishing without a trace in 1998, coinciding with the last entry in the guest book. "They were never found," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with fear as she read the headlines. This must be what they meant, I mused, piecing the puzzle together. Do you think they're still here? Jake shivered, glancing over his shoulder. If they never left, then what are we dealing with? A sudden chill swept through the room, extinguishing the last vestige of warmth. A cacophony of whispers filled our ears, an anguished chorus of despair that seemed to rise from the very walls. We should leave, now, I urged, dread gnawing at my insides. Just as we turned to flee, the door slammed shut, trapping us within. Panic surged as we pressed our weight against the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, echoing incessantly, filling the room with the sinister energy. Choosing to confront the darkness, I approached the mirror again. "Who are you?" I demanded. Suddenly, a face appeared in the mirror, twisted with sorrow. "We're trapped! Help us!" it cried, its voice a haunting plea. "I'll help you!" I screamed, unwilling to let them suffer. In that instant, the room seemed to swell, the darkness enveloping us. I felt a surge of power as I took the mirror's surface in my hands, the weight of countless souls pressing against me. Sanity was fragile as the echoes of despair resonated through me. Holding on to hope, we gathered our strength, chanting soothing words in unison. The room erupted in a blinding light, and just as suddenly, the pressure lifted and the door swung open. We stumbled out, gasping for air. As we fled the villa, the last remnants of shadows flickered behind us as they howled in protest, angry at our trespasses but grateful for release. We returned to our town, forever changed by our experience in the villa. The guest book, still clutched in my hands, served as a somber reminder of the lives lost within that house. The cryptic warning echoed in my mind. Don't want to know what happened. But now I knew. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, her eyes reflecting the terror we shared. "I will be," I replied softly. "But the story isn't over." I glanced back at the villa, where shadows danced in the windows undisturbed. The lingering presence held countless stories yet to be told, memories awaiting release. And as I turned to leave, a chilling realization struck me. Some secrets are never meant to be unearthed.